Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Reverend Tomas Garza, and this is A Course in Miracles 365, Awakening to Love. So I'm glad that you all have been enjoying the recent videos here. It's very comforting to me to know that you're out there and that you are committed and that you care about spirituality, that you care about your own practice, and whether you follow A Course in Miracles as your main practice or a part of an existing practice doesn't matter. It's the fact that you're here, you're interested, you're committed, and you're listening to our inner voice. You'll notice I said our inner voice. I am so grateful to you for that because this is what the world needs, isn't it? It needs people that are willing to approach one of the many doors to spiritual practice and open it and walk through, even if you're a little bit or a lot bit afraid to do it. It's clearly what this world of conflict needs. So it's a beautiful thing. And as I sometimes do here, as I often do, I find myself doing this, is it's worth to me taking the time out to acknowledge that and your efforts and your practice, which is the best thing that you can offer. So I hope that you find some comfort in these words. Because today we're going to talk about something that we avoid. We avoid it. Don't we avoid pretty much most things that are good for us? If you want to lose weight, for example, and you love pizza and candy bars and nachos, don't you avoid cutting those out? Just one more weekend, I'll start my exercise regimen, my diet on Monday. It's this desire that we have to keep our own individuality. It's our desire to keep what this course calls special hatred. Yeah, special love. We want to reserve our judgment for ourselves. This is how it shows up. So you might be asking, okay, what does my unwillingness to give up candy have to do with spirituality? It's the same principle, which we'll talk about here in the context of forgiveness today. It's the same idea. We want to keep certain things for ourselves. We have elections coming up here in the United States in November. It's October 6th today. So in 1 month, we will have elections. And in fact, in many places, people will be voting early. They'll be voting by mail-in ballot, which is how Cindy and I do it. And there's a lot of special hatred going on. This is really a perfect example of this principle in effect. People are willing to forgive and overlook up to a point. We want to keep our judgment of the opposition party for ourselves. We want to keep our judgment of the people that appear to blindly follow political leaders of any party to ourselves. We want to keep these judgments, special forms of judgment reserved for some people, because some people are cool and other people suck. This is duality on a stick, isn't it? It's a perfect example. And our unwillingness to give up candy is exactly the same as our unwillingness to let go of our judgment of people that we believe to be harmful, completely harmful to the greater good, and flat wrong. It's the same thing. And we've been talking here in the Song of Prayer about ascending the ladder of prayer. So, how do we ascend forgiveness? Spiritual practice. This is A Course in Miracles. It's all about forgiveness, and not just any ordinary forgiveness either. It's forgiveness with the Holy Spirit, as the Course talks about it ad nauseum almost, right? I mean, it repeats this idea over and over and over because we need to get it. This is how we ascend the ladder. This is how we undo the ego. This segment, which is segment 2 of the Song of Prayer, talks about forgiveness. That is the theme, that's the subject matter. And this is the introduction that we're talking about today. Next video is about forgiveness of yourself, which, of course, I invite. So today, the introduction, how does forgiveness interrelate with prayer? Well, as we've seen, true prayer is our natural state of communication with God. That's at the top of the ladder. That's true prayer. That's the party at God's house, so to speak. Our natural state. So forgiveness accompanies prayer here on the path as we ascend the ladder, which is a very, very helpful teaching device, isn't it? It's a helpful visual for us to envision ourselves ascending. At the top of the ladder, of course, forgiveness is no longer necessary. Prayer continues on because it's our natural state of communication with God, in God, one with God, where there are no differences of any kind, period. And forgiveness has an end. That's the end, at the top of the ladder, because we realize at that point that we've always been at home in God, and in fact, there's nothing to forgive. But here on the path, this is how we ascend. Forgiveness and prayer go hand in hand. So let's talk briefly about what we mean by forgiveness in A Course in Miracles, because it's what we avoid. We don't want to give up our special forms of disdain for people and groups of people. We want to hold on to a grudge, don't we? Who hasn't held on to a grudge? Way too long, right? I mean, maybe you're holding on to some right now that maybe the time has come for you to let them go. And perhaps you're not ready. And if you're not ready, no problem, right? At some point, you may find yourself ready. In fact, at some point, you will be ready. Doesn't have to be today. People have talked about, in the context of forgiveness, not feeling like they were emotionally able to do it, or they just couldn't bring themselves to do it just yet. And you know what? If that's you, no problem. People have endured all kinds of abuse in this world. And in fact, I used to work in an arena of, well, rife abuse. I was a family mediator, child custody and parenting time mediator for 13 years. So I saw lots of abuse. Now, the vast majority of that was between the two adult partners. The vast majority. And it may be that you have a nasty ex that you're not ready to forgive yet. And if that's so, then so be it. I invite you to continue watching this because I'm going to talk about how forgiveness works here in the world, how forgiveness, according to this course, is completely different, and what the benefits to you of forgiveness, in fact, are. So, it may be perfectly obvious to you because you may have been a course student longer than I have. It may be perfectly obvious to you that this course turns the world on its head. It's here so that we may perceive differently, so that we may clarify our perception and get to the top of the ladder where there is nothing else to perceive because there's no subject and object. There's no I, there's no me, there's no you, there's nothing to observe because we're all completely one. There's no other. Forgiveness, according to A Course in Miracles, recognizes this. It's a thought, it's an idea, it's an attitude that we take. Forgiveness here in the world can take a lot of forms, and people are often unwilling to do it because they believe that it means to condone or go along with a certain behavior. That's not necessarily the case. In fact, you don't have to condone any abusive behavior ever. Here's how forgiveness, according to A Course in Miracles, is different. Forgiveness in the world, we look at something that someone did to us as though they are a different person who attacked us, who lashed out at us, who said nasty things to us, who passed laws that did not benefit us at all. In fact, they may have harmed us. They may have restricted us, right? We look at it as someone doing something to us as though they are opposite. Forgiveness, according to the Course in Miracles, starts with a different premise. It incorporates a completely different premise altogether. Your brother, in other words, other people, have never been separate from you. If there is no separation of any kind, how can they possibly have harmed you at all? There's no one to harm ultimately. So, from this standpoint, this person has not done anything to you. There's no one out there. There's no one out there. Separate, other. This means everything's going on inside our mind. What we see outside of us is a reflection of what's going on inside. Here's what happens. Here's where this is very powerful. When we forgive what is going on outside, whether it is a political election or an abusive ex or your dog or your cat or the neighbor for parking, I don't know, on your lawn, I don't know, right? For making noise, for throwing a noisy party, whatever you're forgiving someone for, supposedly out there, is going on inside of you. It is a symbol of our unconscious guilt, our fear, our unconscious guilt and our fear of retaliation. We believe we've separated from God. It's not the case. There is no separation of any kind. So, from this standpoint, with this attitude, with this idea, and the more we practice it, it becomes a conviction, a belief, and a certainty. The more we practice it, we forgive our brother for what he did not do. We just simply forgive him and acknowledge that the separation never occurred. What we're looking at is our own projected guilt. It's our own fear And we release this to the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit does the deep level healing. What we supply is our little willingness. Our part is to forgive the appearances out there, so to speak, right? In quotes, out there, that appear to be out there. We do that. The Holy Spirit does the rest and undoes our corresponding unconscious guilt, because there's a deep well of unconscious stuff that goes along with and corresponds to the supposedly outward appearance. It's a profound healing process. We don't do it alone. We're not able to do it alone. And in doing this, we undo the ego because we're not making this world real to us. Yes, we still have to pay the light bill. Yes, we still have to feed ourselves, drink water, things like that. It doesn't mean that the needs of the physical body and the economic structure of the world goes away. We still operate in it, but you find, and we're encouraged to keep forgiving, because things don't affect you the same way. Things that used to piss you off instantaneously are now just nothing. Try it. I invite you to practice it and see what changes. See how your attitude changes. See how your approach to the world and other people changes. See how your approach to yourself, your self-talk, changes. See how all of this changes and how different your experience becomes as you remove this unconscious guilt. The Holy Spirit does it. Guess what? The Holy Spirit's part of you. Self, capital S. It's part of you. That's the part of you that compels you to watch these videos. It's what has you on the path. It's part of you. What you're looking at right now is an image on your screen. It's literally a projected image on your screen. So when this resonates with you, it's you. You're speaking to yourself. How can I be 100% certain of this? There's no separation of any kind. When you forgive someone else, you're forgiving yourself. The benefits are amazing. They're tremendous. They're beyond calculation. And that's how we ascend the ladder. That's why forgiveness is a central principle of A Course in Miracles. And we'll spend the next few videos here going into greater detail about how the Song of Prayer approaches it. So very, very interesting stuff. And my hope is that it will get you to think about it differently. In fact, that's my goal every day. I just turn on the camera and microphone. And to the extent that you question the foundations of everything you now believe, I've succeeded. I've succeeded anyway. My job is to simply share the Holy Spirit with you, which, by the way, you do every time you forgive. You don't have to hold yourself out as a spiritual teacher. In fact, that may make you tremendously uncomfortable to ever think about, and you don't have to do that. This doesn't say anything about what you do for work here in the world. I mean, just do what you do. Do what you do. This is my calling. Yours may look on the outside totally different, but what you're doing is, when you forgive, you're sharing the Holy Spirit with people. You recognize it in yourself when you do that. This is how it operates. Now, it's not exactly immediate, is it? What we avoid is giving up all of our illusions. It's what you're avoiding right now. It's what we all avoid. We want to keep those special forms of judgment. So, as we've talked about recently, a beautiful and highly effective prayer that I encourage you to think about adding to your repertoire is to ask Jesus, ask your guide or guides, ask God, ask the Holy Spirit, you know, ask your inner teacher for help in setting all of your judgments aside, all of them, keeping none for yourself. If you're wondering about how we climb the ladder rapidly, that's it. Keep nothing for yourself. You're literally giving up nothing in exchange for everything. All right. Food for thought, isn't it? And food for practice. So, in the next few videos, we'll go deeper into how the Song of Prayer presents and approaches the topic of forgiveness. And I thank you so much for joining me, as always. Little red button at the bottom, subscribe. I welcome your subscriptions and comments, and I thank you so much for tuning in here.